Next up, we have Gregory Hunter, who's going to talk about his projects in archival education, bringing 45 cultural institutions and 145 students together. Gregory S. Hunter is a professor in the Palmer School of Library Information Science, Long Island University, where he directs the Certificate of Advanced Study in Archives and Records Management. He holds a PhD and 2 master's degrees from New York University and a bachelor's degree from St. John's University in New York. Dr. Hunter is a certified archivist, certified records manager, certified information governance officer. He previously served as manager of corporate archive records for ITT Corporation and director of archival programs for the United Negro Fund. Excuse me. From 2004 to 2009, Dr. Hunter served as the principal archivist and records manager on a team headed by Lockheed Martin to build the Electronic Records Archive, or ERA, for the National Archives and Records Administration. The team was awarded a $300 million contract in September 2005. Dr. Hunter is a co-inventor of 4 patents in the area of digital preservation submitted by the project team in the United States and the European Union. In 2017, Dr. Hunter completed a 6-year term as editor of the American Archivist, the premier peer-reviewed journal in the field. 2 of his books have received awards from the Society of American Archivists. In the last few years, Dr. Hunter has received $2.2 million in external funding to digitize materials in local historical societies and to make available Robert Moses's archival legacy on Long Island. Please welcome Dr. Gregory Hunter.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning. As I was listening, I'm hoping that what I was going to talk about tonight may serve as a model, perhaps, to move forward our discussion from the plenary session, because I do think the model that we are using at Long Island University is definitely something that could be replicated nationwide, worldwide, and could perhaps be an additional bridge that moves us forward in trying to accomplish our important work and bringing together the records of members of various communities. So I'm hoping you see the slide of me. It's a little distracting because there are 2 slides on mine, but this was me in a previous life, before my hair went gray. I was a superhero, quite buff at that time. It actually is my daughter who found this, the wonders of a Google search. She found an Italian comic hero called Gregory Hunter, and for a Father's Day present, gifted me with a collection of these comic books. El Destino de Archon, my Italian it was never any good. I thought it was about the destiny of archives. I said, this is great. It's something about the fate of a place called Archon. But it is nice to have your own Italian superhero comic and to be able to use that to impress the grandchildren these days. So we're just at the right age for superhero comics. But seriously, this is where I've been. It's a career since the 70s. In particular, what's probably most relevant for our discussion here is that I was running microfilming way back when and teaching in the Preservation Administrators Program at Columbia University. When I started teaching there in the 80s, the course was called Reprography, the world's worst course title. Anyone here take a course in reprography? It was, okay, we have one person who took a course in reprography. You're a better person for it. But the syllabus was heavy on how to do mimeographs and Gestetner copies, and I had a week on microfilm, so I brought in microfilm and then some early digitization pilot projects as well. Since 1990, I've been at the Palmer School. They hired me to set up a program in archives and records management, and it's been a great joy to be able to do that for the last 3 decades.
Gregory, I believe your watch is close to the phone on the right side of your wall where your cell phone is. Yeah, just put it in the pocket.
Okay.
It's getting it.
Sorry about that. Okay, Long Island University, this is my dean's slide. The dean is always happy to have one slide like this, but I did want to let you know that we do have a master's degree in library and information science as well as a freestanding 18-credit certificate that could be taken post-masters in archives and records management. We also were the third university in the United States to have a partnership with the Institute of Certified Records Managers so that our graduates get credit for parts of the ICRM exam. I say all of that because that is a ready pool of people who are studying preservation, studying archives, and who were very willing to get the practical experience to go along with the theoretical parts of their education. And we're very happy to be a part of our initiative with local historical organizations. So this is the project, digitizing local history sources. That is very generous funding from the Robert David Lyon Gardner Foundation that they gave us 6 years ago. We're waiting to hear in November if they will give us some more money. At the moment, I'm at the part of grants administration where I am looking for coins in the couch and trying to find all those loose coins from the grant that I can bundle together for some more work until we get the decision from the Gardner Foundation. We're very lucky on Long Island. Robert David Lyon Gardner was the 16th Lord of the Manor of a place called Gardner Island, which is between the two forks at the end of Long Island. He had charters that went back pre-revolution. His family, they owned this. They owned big chunks of Southampton and just pretty much big chunks of all of Long Island from these charters with the king. When he passed, he set up a foundation that's interested in the history, especially of Nassau and Suffolk County. Well, isn't it nice to work for Long Island University sometimes? So I know that that's not a funding source that other folks will have access to. But perhaps this kind of cooperative model that we've established will enable you to go for funding sources to replicate locally what we've been able to do here on Long Island. So we've been 6 years into the project, and what I want to do is just share with you a little bit about the project, but also pick up a little bit on the keynote, in that what I tell my students is that we are preserving the story of Long Islanders going back into the 1600s. But what we are also doing is preserving the stories of the people who've preserved those materials over time. As I go out to the historical societies, I feel young. It's not these days that I feel young in a lot of places. That is one place where I feel young. And again, to pick up with what Tamara said, that the people who are preserving the history, there are succession issues that are going to happen that are already here. So we are celebrating the people who preserved this local history, who've kept this alive in their community. And I make sure that my students understand that as well. They go out to the historical societies. We celebrate the people who've kept the history. So it really is a wonderful opportunity to have the next generation of professionals understand all the work that went before them, especially the work that may have happened outside of formal institutional settings. So partnerships are the key. We, at the Palmer School, we're a small faculty. We're 5 people. We consider ourselves to be force multipliers, like in the military analogy, that we are trying to partner. It's the only way we can do what we're able to do. So partnerships have been a key to what we've been doing. And what I'm going to do as I go through the next couple of slides is give you a feel for the collection as well. I don't just want this to be it's money, it's students, it's an institution. I want you to have a feel for some of the stuff we're doing. We have participating historical organizations. We've identified over 100 of them in Nassau and Suffolk County. And we know that that's not accurate. Yes, some are historical organizations, but some are other types of organizations. A church, Historic St. George Church in Hempstead, asked if we could digitize their sacramental records. And on the first page of their baptismal register from 1725 was the baptism of an enslaved child identified by name and associated with the names of his owners. A few pages in, a family of 9 enslaved were baptized. So we are reaching out as broadly as we can to make certain that we are being as helpful as we can to the Long Island community. So we've partnered with those organizations. These are volunteer-run organizations by and large. A few have professional staff. One of the biggest issues is metadata. And so we, in part, are taking that burden from them by having our students work on the metadata. That metadata is a big barrier working with community organizations, and so we're able to help them with that. The organizations retain rights to all their materials. We're not taking things. We're not building a collection. We are digitizing, making this available, but they control their materials. They receive copies of all of the images, high-resolution scans. Usually they show up on my doorstep with a thumb drive, wanting to get copies of all of the images we did for them on the DT Atom. That doesn't last, that thumb drive doesn't go too far, those of you who've done this. So I wind up handing out or lending external hard drives to community organizations on a regular basis. Another partner has been the Fire Island National Seashore of the National Park Service. On Long Island, Fire Island is out there hanging out in the water more than Long Island is hanging out in the water. And the Fire Island National Seashore is interested in preserving the heritage of the communities as well. So they enable us to use one of the ferry terminals off-season in Patchogue. And my students go to the ferry terminal. Fire Island communities bring things to the ferry terminals. That is a picture from the Fire Island Pines Historical Society. It's called the Pines. It's one of the 2 LGBTQ communities on Fire Island. And that is an annual event called the Invasion. And I'll let you do your Google searches on that. But it's, we have several years of invasion pictures from the Pines. Project activities are conducted by Gardner Fellows. And we were just talking about fellows. So I made the decision not to hire professional staff. I made the decision, and the Gardner Foundation liked this, that we would be educating the next generation of digitization professionals as well. So it's students who are working on site in our lab. We have, I guess, 4 big Epson scanners as well, and they also go out to the historical societies. I have 6 portable digitization labs set up with a small Epson scanner, PC, hardware, everything they need. And I send the teams out 2 by 2, very biblical. Students go out to the historical societies and work where the materials are and work with the volunteers and understand what it means to work in a community archives, not to work just in an academic setting or a corporate setting. One of the great experiences that, as you'll see, I had to suspend naturally during COVID. I didn't want to be anyone who killed off volunteers by infecting them with COVID, so we suspended that for quite a while, but are back to doing that now. So Palmer School students, the grant enables me to pay 6 credits of tuition remission instead of paying them as a graduate assistant and it gets taxed away anyway. So students who work on the project receive 6 credits of tuition remission. It has brought me the best students in our program, as well as the best students. We have a dual degree program with New York University. We teach our courses at NYU's Bopes Library. We have 25 different dual degrees with NYU, where students get our master's in library science, plus a degree in costume studies or history. So we have 25 dual degree programs. Those students are coming out to Long Island to work on this project because of the experience and the contacts they're making. So we're getting the best of the best of the best. You'll see the total at this point after 6 years. We've awarded 145 fellowships totaling over $1 million. 800,000 of that came from the Gardner Foundation and 200,000 was my own university. I'm very proud to say that contributed as well. So $1.5 million grant. You can, we bought the equipment and pretty much everything else has gone to the students as our model. And I don't know what I did. Okay, we're back to the students. So the organizations, the participants, there's a picture from Long Beach. What we're finding is that visual images are very compelling for the historical societies at this point. 45 not-for-profit organizations with historical material. That's actually 2 more since I sent the slides. We just added last week the Walt Whitman Birthplace Association came to us with Walt Whitman's family diary that was given to him, and until his death he kept the genealogical information in the center of that diary. So we've added them as well. We did have some TV coverage. It hasn't aired yet, but Fox 5 News came out for the unveiling of the Walt Whitman diary, which had not left his homestead. So They took the diary back with them, needless to say. I wasn't storing Walt Whitman's diary anywhere on campus. So over 75,000 images. It's probably higher than that because I haven't been counting this semester. I don't count in mid-semester. I'm like Kenny Rogers with The Gambler. I'm not going to count my winnings till the dealing's done. So at the end of the semester, I'll count up what we're up to. But I mentioned, I put the postcard there because one of the things that's important if you're working with organizations as we are is my job is to go out into the field, work with the people who are keeping the records, and digitize what is their priority. What helps them move forward. Each historical organization is different in doing that. It's not as though I'm saying, I want all your diaries, give me every diary on Long Island. I want to understand the volunteers. What are you trying to do? What part of your history is most important to you? What will bring in new members? What will sustain you? And I go out and spend the time and talk with them, and based upon that, we figure out what the priority for digitization will be. A lot of what we're doing with the quality of the equipment Digital Transitions has is that we are doing everyone's headaches. We are doing everyone's problems. And the Gardner Foundation doesn't want to discourage an historical society from doing its own digitization, but with our resources, we can take the difficult materials, the things that take the time that you don't want to put on a piece of glass and close a cover. So that's primarily what we are doing for the historical societies. We are, I'm happy to say, especially after the keynote, that all of this is publicly available. That we have, because I had a grant, I've set up my own site on Preservica. And we can talk about that a bit if you'd like, but it's something that I manage. All of these images are publicly available, liu.access.preservica.com. You'll get JPEGs. The historical societies have access. They can go behind the scenes, get the TIFFs, enhance the metadata, do anything they would like with that. But that was part of our commitment in getting this grant, that we were going to make everything publicly available. I have had some preliminary conversations with the Internet Archive in terms of also having this available through them. So I know that this is Preservica. I don't want it to be an island. Okay, resilience. What about COVID? So as with many of you, one day we're scanning, one day we're not. How do we respond? That's a picture of Isidore Straus from the Straus Historical Society. Isidore was the founder of Macy's. If you're a musical theater fan or a Leonardo DiCaprio fan of Titanic, Isidore Straus and his wife died on the Titanic. In 1911, he was considering a run for the U.S. Senate. We digitized his scrapbook. What a pain that was. But there's Isidore, who certainly faced some issues of resilience. We were able to do this because of some decisions that I wish I had thought through. Maybe there'll be a pandemic, but LIU had moved to a cloud-based service. I also went very low-tech. Remember, I started in the microfilming days. So I had drives at home with copies of every image I had on site. So that meant when they said you can't come to campus anymore, I was able to access the copies I had at home and keep students busy. So I had students, remember, I'm giving students their tuition money. If I can't give them their tuition money, they can't take classes. You get the whole thing that I'm sitting at home unemployed. So I had to keep them busy in some way, and did that by uploading the backup images from my drive, having students work editing images, and having them add more information into Preservica. So it really was dumb luck, but sometimes dumb luck leads to success. So, and being paranoid perhaps leads to success with copies of copies of copies. So in the fall 2020, the campus was, I was the only one on campus in the whole library, basically, because I wanted to digitize again. So we went through tons of wipes, of Lysol, of everything else. We kept students going. I didn't send them out into the field. I stole rooms on campus. We spread students out, and we were able to keep going. That image is of a place from the Halleckville Museum Farm, and a woman named Virginia Wines preserved the records of every piece of property on the North Fork of Long Island, lovingly over her entire lifetime. Her son let us digitize these materials, and one of the nice things, we had a big article in our local newspaper, Newsday, right around Easter, and he then sent us a picture of him and his children and their children reading the newspaper article at Easter dinner that talked about their mother, Virginia Wines, having preserved this. So it was just I have that picture posted on our bulletin board outside of our labs. So we're back. Students are on campus. They're working again with the DT Adams system, and they're getting fabulous jobs. I was noting that you're looking for some highly motivated expert people, so I may be in contact with you folks afterwards, because our students are really benefiting from this experience and are doing just a tremendous bit of work as they continue with their professional careers. So a couple of conclusions. What I want to suggest as a model is this public-private partnership, that the public side is National Park Service, the private side is our funding source, the partners in the nonprofit organizations, the people who've kept this history alive, and the students. The students are telling me, yes, I want to be ready to do the work, but I also want to do good. And this is an opportunity with a pilot project like this to have them do good outside of the university setting with members of the community. We were resilient, and we're looking forward to being able to continue this project moving forward. We're only halfway through doing something for the historical societies. We've done nothing, we haven't done everything for anyone. We're just doing top priorities. So we have plenty of work to go. And there's the information. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about this idea, this partnership. My funding experience was lucking out with the Gardner Foundation, but we've already extended that. We have some other partners coming in to fund specific fellowships already starting next semester. So thank you for your time. I do hope that this is a way that we can move the discussion forward and maybe bring in the next generation of professionals while they're at their educational level, at their educational stage, to get enculturated about making a difference for local community organizations. So thank you very much.
So Greg, I'll start off with the first question. As a transplanted Long Islander, I appreciate the work you're doing. And congratulations on getting media attention. How are the organizations on Long Island contacting you, and how are they knowing about how to contact you to have their materials digitized and looked at?
Sure. Well, at the start, we held an event to try to bring people together on campus. That was the initial contact. Since then, I've been using media outreach in part to become familiar with other organizations. During COVID, it was tough that there was no one answering a phone at the historical societies. Some of them don't answer their email in the best of days. So we're at this point now where it's really almost word of mouth, coming off the media contacts. And as we are very lucky with our funding source as well, the Gardner Foundation. When a small organization approaches them to digitize something, the first thing they do is say, have you talked to Greg Hunter at LIU? And so then we talk about what we can do for them as well as what they could do on their own. So the other thing is we got the easy ones perhaps, the first 45. The other 45 are going to be difficult, and it's going to involve me as project director going out and meeting, because it goes back to the trust. If the organizations don't trust me, that I'm not trying to take their materials, I'm not trying to do something nefarious, I have my own, they have to trust me, and that trust comes from meeting people and going to them to see how they are working and what they've been about. So, the last 45, I better check my tires, make sure that I've got good tires on my car, because I think I'm going to be spending even more time out and about on the 100 miles of Long Island.
We have time for a few questions before our next. So I see a hand raised in the back.
Thanks for your presentation, really enlightening. I'm wondering, in light of our keynote, what kind of work you do to evaluate before you do digitization efforts with these collections, particularly the next 45 that you're going to be doing? And do you offer the collection, collation, and sort of pre-digitization work through your program? Thank you.
Yeah. So the organizations do submit an application where I ask them to tell me about anything they've digitized, what are their top priorities. Then I go out and I visit them and talk about not just what are their priorities, but really what's ready for digitization and what we can do about that. So yeah, there is some work that goes on, but as I say to my students, every day is an adventure when we're doing community archives. Every box we open, you know, if someone says that this box of loose materials, this is our top priority. And we've had that. We digitized some loose materials to find out from an independent researcher that those materials, one document in particular, was the evidence he had been looking for how George Washington's spy ring worked on Long Island. And the people in the organization had no idea it was that significant. It was a simple bill of lading, and it had the names of the two parties of the spy ring. And they used that, they handed off materials when they handed off information. So I don't want to take the viewpoint that if this isn't arranged and described, I'm not going to do it. Sometimes post-production, we can add enough information to make it meaningful. So it's really, I'm trying to work with the organizations where they are now. This is an as-is business as I see it. And I want to find a way to work with them to get something that they're going to be proud of when they see it online. And they are. The volunteers, when I take a new collection, they can't wait. Tell me when I can see this. Can I link the web page to it? They can't wait for this. So I want that enthusiasm from the community organization. I don't want to stand in the way. I want to help them with what they're enthused about, making that available to the public.
Question from our virtual attendees. How did you determine what equipment should be constituted in your portable digital labs, and are there times when materials are brought back to the studio so scanning can be done with further equipment?
We were fortunate to use a consultant at the start, and that was money well spent. We used a consultant who advised us about all of the equipment. We did not have the DT Atom on our radar when we did the grant, and our consultant came back and said, you know, there's this other piece of equipment that's double what you budgeted, but if Gardner will splurge for that, that will cover a range of materials. So having someone who really can advise you about the specific equipment was important for us. We went with Epson scanners pretty much, other than the DT Atom. So yes, there are times where why I go out in the field is that I want to make certain that what we are going to digitize either on site is appropriate for that, or that we're bringing back to campus is appropriate for that. I don't want, people just don't show up with materials. As it turns out, I've wound up being, I'm the delivery service. I go out and pick up the materials and bring them to campus. Very often the volunteers will come to campus to get the materials back because they want to see the lab. But I don't want a volunteer arriving with a carload of material. So I go out and I select what we're going to do at what phase. But I love them to see the lab. They are so interested in what happened with this. But yes, there are times where they think we're going to do something that it has to be done on site. The Walt Whitman diary, they would have preferred that not leave the Walt Whitman birthplace in Huntington. I hated to break the news to them, but we weren't scrunching that under the cover of an Epson scanner. We were going to bring that to campus, and we were going to take care and do that right. So it's negotiation. It's respecting the community members, trying to be part of the education that we've talked about already. It doesn't have to be formal. When I'm out there, I can tell them about storage. I can tell them about different things. So informal education is education, and it's part of being out there in the community.
Do we have another virtual?
One more virtual question then. What criteria do you use to determine your metadata for capture?
Okay, and this was in terms of metadata, this was another place where the consultant was very helpful and very useful. Since I'm planning on 100 organizations that have no metadata schemes in place, don't use archival descriptive standards, what am I going to do? Am I going to try to standardize what they're doing, or will this be an as-is situation? We spent a lot of time with our consultant doing this, and what we ultimately decided was for our project, we were going to have we would just do Dublin core metadata, do something that would be useful for a wide range of items. And it was only going to be 15 elements, so it wouldn't be overwhelming. We wouldn't put a barrier that anyone in the organizations had to do anything with the metadata. No barrier. Our students, when they're scanning, will capture basic information, and we actually just use a spreadsheet for that. But we went simple. Preservica would enable us to add other metadata schemes in pretty easily if we chose to. I also thought originally that we would take their existing metadata and bring them into our system. Got scared away from that pretty quickly in terms of all. So what we're doing is a minimum. We have a unique image number for everything we do that they can put in their system. This way, I'm not trying to bring in data from 5, 10, 15 different systems. They can take our unique piece of information and put it in their system. And it's working pretty well. Those who don't have a system, those who have things on paper, that works for them. If we have a lot of folks on Long Island who are using museum software, using Past Perfect. So again, I have to meet people where they are. So I think I'm just about, if this thing is going to have flames shoot out in a minute when I'm officially done with time. But I thank you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation at lunchtime and at breaks.